to embrace new innovations, allow them to better understand consumer needs and wants, and therefore come up with sound strategic plans to actually market their product. But most importantly, the most important point is actually enabling them to actually gauge, to identify, and then to understand where the current business profile stand, and therefore come up with and therefore make better judgments. Okay, so if you can see on the screen, the first example, it allows them to discard older innovations, allow them to identify when to discard older innovations to adopt new ones, and secondly, to set aside resources and funds so that they can actually, on the relevant spendings like marketing, R&D, and finance. The second group of policymakers in which I'll be talking about is shareholders. People who actually invest money in your company in order to reap dividends out of your business operations. Since their concern is actually more towards how to make their money, turn their money into more money, therefore it is important for the business itself and the shareholders to reach a mutual consensus on how the business should be carried out. In the event that they do not understand, investors cannot appreciate the directions in which the business is going, they might eventually just pull out, and therefore result in lowering your shareholder equity. And what if, imagine this, what if this potential innovation can turn into a multi-million market? The loss is not only the company's, it is the shareholders' loss as well. Therefore, it is important for them to keep an open-minded view on innovations. However, even though, having said that, but it doesn't mean that shareholders should simply jump into a new innovation, because it is still financially risky to simply jump into a new area without gauging the future costs and benefits of either sticking to a sticking to an older innovation or moving on to a new one. However, if in the event that this potential innovation can turn into a viable business venture, shareholders should always push the way for change and then to drive innovation rather than sticking to obsolete ones. Okay, now I pass my time over to Serene.
Okay, I'll give a brief introduction to the innovation that we'll be focusing on, which is the Ford Model T. The Model T entered the market in 1908 and is considered the most significant automobile of all time. Prior to the Model T, there were other cars that people can drive around in. You can see on the slide. But these vehicles, right, they couldn't solve the problems that were present at that time and meet consumer needs. So people were generally more accustomed to using the horse and carriage as a traditional mode of transport. So does anybody want to guess like one of the problems faced by some of them? Anybody?
Very expensive.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. So why is it very expensive? It's because of the high manpower required in handmade production. And another problem was also because of the poor road condition. And many cars existing in the market before the Model T, they were not able to run on bumpy and muddy roads. So look at the Daimler four-wheeler. If someone was to drive it down the slope, right, he would probably fly out of it. So the Model T was designed to navigate bumpy roads. Unlike older models of cars, the Model T actually has a suspension that consists of transversely mounted springs, which allow more wheel movement to deal with the dirt roads. So it was also at this point of time that Henry Ford came up with that moving assembly line, and this significantly cut labor costs. And of course, the prices of Model T fell, so much so that it was actually cheaper than keeping a horse. And of course, this definitely contributed to the success of Model T at that time. And I'll now pass the time on to Yuan Yu, who will go into greater detail with the help of the video. Thank you.
The Model T has brought us mass production from a horse and buggy level of technology to machines that run by gasoline engines. Henry Ford, the creator of the Model T, made use of the assembly line for the production of vehicles. This efficient method of production took only 1/10 of the time taken to manufacture vehicles by hand before the Model T was created. The assembly line was arranged in a way that the frame, wheels, and tires were assembled separately from the body of the car. The car is then formed when the body drops onto the frame. Before the Model T was created, only high-income groups of people were able to afford to have their own cars. However, in 1908, when the Model T was introduced, middle-income groups were able to travel in their own cars due to its affordable price. By 1918, half of the cars in the US were Model Ts. The Model T accelerates about 10 times faster than the horse carriages and the buggies that the people were accustomed to. The Model T was sturdy enough to withstand all sorts of road conditions, be it wet, bumpy or muddy, from no roads to city roads. This was an important aspect as cities were still developing and most of the roads were not developed yet. To summarize, the Model T is the first affordable vehicle and the most influential car of the 20th century. It is the great-great-great-grandparent of every car you see today. As you can see, right, the Model T was really sturdy enough to assure any grounds
So class, after watching the video, what theory of innovation do you think the Model T falls under?
Design.
No, theory of innovation, not type of innovation. Yes, indeed, it's the dominant design. To understand why the Model T is a dominant design, let's first backtrack and take a look at the definition of a dominant design. The dominant design is basically the basic architecture of product or process that becomes the accepted market standard. Both the Model T and assembly line became the overwhelming market standard during that time. In the past, cars looked like this, the left picture. After Ford introduced its Model T with its body made out of vanadium steel and 4 wheels, many people realized this was the safer and most convenient method of traveling around. As you saw from the video just now, the Model T could travel up and down slopes and still remain relatively stable. Therefore, it is no wonder that in 1914, just 6 years after the introduction of the Ford Model T, Ford produced more cars than all the other American car makers combined. And when Ford produced its 10 million car, 10% of the cars worldwide were Model Ts. Next, the assembly line Ford introduced along with its Model T also became the market standard today. Ford's assembly line was so efficient and cost-saving that many other industries during that time also copied. For example, Citroën became the first native European manufacturers to adopt it. So the assembly line traveled from America to European countries. Also, it's evident that up to today, right, many manufacturing industries in our world still adopt the assembly line method. Next, we will talk about how does dominant design arise. Firstly, there must be high consumer preference for the product. For example, Ford Model T has breakthrough engineering. It was one of the first few car manufacturers to introduce 4 cylinders in their engine. Next, Ford also ensures safety for their passengers by introducing vanadium steel and alloy as the main material used. Lastly, due to Ford's assembly line, he was able to introduce attractive prices for its Model T. Therefore, many households could afford the Model T, and hence there was high consumer preference for the Model T. Next, for a dominant design to arise, the respective company must also have high market power. Ford has a lot of investors backing him, and he has extensive marketing when he introduced the Model T. Hence, he was able to gain huge market share, and hence he was able to make his Model T the dominant design. In conclusion, our group has shown you the 4 theories of innovation, the importance of theories to would-be innovators and policymakers, and hence we can show you how the Ford Model T was a dominant design. We hope that through our group's presentation, you will have a better understanding of the theories of innovation. Thank you. We will now answer any questions.